Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on today?
Man, it is Friday.
I do like Friday.
I do too. It's been a long week.
Not for me, man. I was on vacation.
Yeah, well, whatever.
But that vacation is over.
It's over, man.
All right, Gibbs, let's give our Patreon shout-outs. We have Kathy Cristelli, Annalisa. No last name. Drea Ronald, and that could be Drea, Ranel, Ronald. I could butcher that in a number of different ways. So
I'll leave it alone.
You're just going to leave that one alone?
I'll leave it alone.
Frankie Stevenson, Tim Davidson, Kirsten Chan, Caitlin Tull, and Renee Williams. So big shout out to all of those folks for deciding to support us on Patreon. It means a lot.
Appreciate it.
And then we're going back in the vault, Gibbs. Or to your jailhouse days.
Well, every time you do that, something tightens up on me a little bit.
Something? Can I guess what that something is?
I'm just saying.
Roger Sphincter Niner ringworm. So going back into the vault, picked out Megan Garrett, and Megan's been with us from, the very beginning.
Megan?
Well, I don't think it is. I think it's Megan.
Megan. We like Megan.
She'll tell us one way or the other. It's not spelled like Megan. Let's put it that way.
Is it spelled like Megan?
It is spelled like Megan. That's why I said Megan.
I'm glad you let her out of the vault, by the way.
She's been in there a long time, man.
Welcome back.
Nah, but we appreciate Megan for supporting all this time. We appreciate the new people that are supporting us, and we appreciate everybody else that continues to support us month after month.
Even that one guy.
Oh, that one guy?
Yeah, I do appreciate him, but
You're talking right to him.
One guy, you know you are.
So we had the Q&A episode come out last week, Gibbs. A lot of good reception about it. I think people enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I had fun.
I think we had to do part two.
Part deux. At some point in time. I had a lot of fun doing it. It was laid back, relaxing, not much editing.
I brought up my Milton Bradley gaming skills. Was it Milton Bradley did Clue?
I don't know who made Clue, but I know for sure that it was not Milton Berle.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that I know for sure. I don't know who made it. Could have been Hasbro. Could have been Milton Bradley. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm good for a screw up every now.
But we know it's not Milton Berle. Man, that's starting early too.
Yeah, it is early.
This is going to be a good episode. And I'm not cutting that no matter.
I can tell already.
No matter what you say. But speaking of the game Clue, that's the one that I got the biggest kick out of. When you went down I don't even know, librarian, and then somehow you got into the graduate. You were talking about Mrs. Robinson?
Mrs. Robinson.
Like you thought she was a Clue?
Yeah, I did.
One of the characters in the Clue game?
Well, there's some female, like Mrs. Something in the game.
And at some point, you may have said Colonel Sanders.
See, I never said Colonel Sanders, but it seems like somebody
might have thought you did.
I said Colonel Sanders.
There's a lot of it going around on social media.
Maybe I said the Colonel.
Yeah, I think you did. You said the Colonel.
Yeah.
And that's Colonel Sanders.
Yeah, well, he does make good chicken.
So true crime all the time. After you're done listening to this, jump over. There's an episode out right now. We're doing Adolfo Constanzo and Sarah Aldretti. And this one's different. Gives from a lot of the ones that we do.
South of the border.
We're going south of the border, down into Mexico.
Getting our guac and tequila on.
But it's got Texas, Mexico ties.
Yeah.
It's also a woman, and we don't do many of those because percentage-wise, it's a low percentage.
Because they don't get caught.
Because Gibby thinks women are smart enough not to get caught.
They are.
And I have to agree with him.
They think it through.
Not to put our gender down, but, women are smart.
Have you not watched Snapped?
I have, but all those people got caught, or else they wouldn't know what the story is.
Well, I was going to say I haven't watched it, but I knew it was about...
your wife watches it.
My wife watches it
That's
all
what you know.
the time.
So maybe some of those women were not as smart because they all got caught.
It's a learning lesson.
Which is how they got themselves on an episode of Snap.
You need unsnapped. Yeah.
Unsnapped. But let's dive into the unsolved case. And it's the unsolved murder of Mischelle Lawless, 19-year-old woman. And I want to start this episode out, Gibbs, with a clip.
Northbound ramp, the tent exit at I-55, scene of a potential homicide. Viewing a maroon, what appears to be a Buick Skylark. Today's date is November the 8th, 1992 at 3:49 a.m. What appears to be blood splatters on the highway. Been labeled as evidentiary items to this point. Pool of blood approximately 16-18 inches away from the tire of the vehicle. Various articles of clothing in the rear of the vehicle. There appears to be another shell casing on the right side of the passenger door. Purse, which is a tan vinyl, was apparently laying underneath the head in the passenger seat. It has been removed to the rear vehicle. Has blood stains on the outside. Been told the vehicle, upon first arrival, the driver's window was down as it is now with the door closed. The car was running, keys in the ignition. The passenger door was locked. It is a clear night, cold, probably close to freezing. A full moon. Apparently a blood trail leads from the car from the left front tire around the front of the vehicle, back off to the east to the guardrail, and potentially down the embankment off the guardrail. There's what appears to be some blood dripped on the guardrail that goes along to the north and east. Appears to be what known here as a blood smear on the guardrail. Victim may have been taken, rubbed back up with a large pool of blood in the grass. Okay, from the car, crossing the guardrail, find a spot of blood 3 feet safe from the guardrail. What appears to be a slight trail.
There's some right there. There's some right there. There's some there. There's some right
Going
there.
downhill. Okay, let's go downhill, guys. Turn your light.
It goes right through there, Steve.
Further on out is the mobile home sales lot.
See, look how wide this is.
That may be
It's almost
somebody's.
like she was rolling grass.
Blood about 8 feet in a depressed area from the guardrail.
So I know that's a long clip, and it would definitely be better if there wasn't a whole bunch of heavy machinery or something in the background, kind of making it harder to hear. But what I thought was so interesting about that, Gibbs, was, I mean, how many times do you actually get to hear or see police walk through a crime scene?
Yeah, it's interesting for sure.
And hear them talking about, documenting the blood splatter and the shell casings. And I know we're going to get into some of this, but especially talking about the blood on the guardrail and what they're observing. So again, I know it was long, but I thought it was very interesting. So we're talking about November 8th, 1992. In the early morning hours, Mischelle Lawless was found bludgeoned, shot to death in her car at the intersection of Highway 55 and 77, which is in the town of Benton, Missouri. Michelle's first name was actually Angela. Mischelle was her middle name, but that's what she went by, Gibbs. So we're going to call her Mischelle.
Yeah.
That's what everybody called her.
Let's call her that.
She was barely 5 feet tall. I don't even think she topped the scales at 100 pounds.
Pretty petite.
Yeah, so a very small woman, but she was a high-level belt in karate. I don't know if it was brown. I don't think she was a black belt.
No,
But
I think she was working on her black
I think
belt.
she was maybe a brown belt working on black.
Yeah.
But still, that's respectable. You've put in a lot of time.
It's a discipline.
I have a daughter that's actually a black belt in Taekwondo.
Really?
So I know how much time she put into it. She could kick your ass, by the way.
I don't know. I know Krav Maga.
Krav Maga. But let's get back to Mischelle. All of her friends talked about what a strong person she was and how fearless she was for her size. Because again, 5 foot tall, 100 pounds, that's pretty small.
So it's kind of
Petite.
like maybe like she was like a firecracker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they said, not that she was mean, but don't mess with her because she's not going to back down. At 19, Mischelle was a freshman at Southeast Missouri State University, and she had a job working at a Shoney's in Sykeston.
Shoney's. That's like a Frisch's, Big Boy. Their name.
Similar.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Same food.
Mischelle was an attractive young woman. She was a 1991 graduate of Kelly High School. She was a member of the Benton Girl Scout Troop. She was a member of the Unity Church. She had even been a candy striper at St. Francis Medical Center in Cape Girardeau. So she had a lot of stuff going on at the age of 19.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like she was a really good, rounded person, did good things. I mean, she's volunteering. She belongs to her church.
She's got a job. She's going to school. She's working on a black belt. And she had a loving family. Her dad, Marvin, her mother, Esther. She had a brother named Jason and a sister named Valerie. So I'm picturing this, Gibbs. And again, I could be wrong, but from everything that you and I read in the research, I'm picturing this as a great family. They're tight knit. They've raised a good daughter. She's heading down the right path, doing all the right thing. It's a man named Mark Abbott that finds Michelle's car early that morning. And he's the one that would ultimately report this scene to police, that he had seen a woman in a car. The woman had been shot, and he had actually tried to call 911 at a nearby payphone, but it was out of order. So he has to drive all the way to the police department to let them know what's going on. And as he's giving details to police, he says that the woman in the car that he saw, her face was covered with blood, so much so that her hair was stuck to her face. The other detail that he would give, Gibbs, very important, is that as he was leaving to head to the police department, he saw what he described as a white car with a Hispanic man driving away from the scene with 3 other people in the car with him. No description on the 3 other people, though. So police rushed to the scene, and you could hear it on the tape as to what they saw as they were walking through this crime scene, and they're trying to put it together as to how they thought it went down either the night before or early that morning, Gibbs, because at this point, they don't know. So police come up with a theory pretty quickly, when they're at the scene, and it's that Mischelle got out of her vehicle, was involved in some type of confrontation, and then somehow ended up over the guardrail and down the bottom of the hill. And it's at the bottom of the hill where police believe the most violent part of this act took place. Because you hear them talking about it on the tape, right, Gibbs? They're talking about blood trail. They're kind of following it. They get to the guardrail, they can kind of see, and then you kind of hear them. I think they're walking down that way. So they're trying to put it all together. But they believe that she was beaten so badly that she passed out. Because at the bottom of that hill, there was so much blood. So that means a couple things, right? That means that that's probably where the violent part of the altercation took place. That's how they're coming up with that.
The struggle.
Where she's beaten very badly. And I think that's also why they theorized that she passed out at the bottom of that hill, because there was so much blood. And what police believe happened next was that Mischelle was carried back up the hill over the guardrail and put back in her car. This is when they think that the assailant or multiple assailants reached through the window and shot Mischelle 3 times. One of these shots was point blank in the face. Another shot was to the back of her head. And the third shot was into her back. So again, I think as we're talking about this crime scene and we're talking about the police theory, a lot of this seems to make sense, right? There's a big pool of blood at the bottom of the hill. There's blood on the guardrail. It leads to you thinking she was somehow got down to the bottom of the hill. And ultimately, we know they find her in her car.
I'm just trying to figure out why so violent, man. I mean, she's a 5 foot, 100 pound or less, tiny female. Yet a fight occurs, and then unfortunately, it looks like just a severe beating at the bottom of the hill. Why did they have to drag her back up, put her in the car, and then not shoot her just once, but 2 additional times? I mean, it's just, my goodness.
Well, you and I have talked about the fact that normally when you see this type of violence, what does it mean? It means there was some personal aspect to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if not, why go to such the extreme like you're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, we know it's not a robbery because they say in the police walkabout, when we first played, is that they mentioned there's her purse laying there.
And it's going to come out that she was not sexually assaulted. So if you take away that motive, you take away the robbery motive, and you look at how gruesome, how over the top this murder was, to me, at least from the beginning, Gibbs, it looks like it could be personal. Now, one thing that police find as they're looking over Mischelle is that she has blood under her fingernails, some bruising on her wrists and hands, which appear as though she put up, like you said, Gibbs, some type of fight with her attacker or attackers. And it's kind of why we point out, number one, how petite she was. Number two, the fact that she's studying karate, working on a black belt. So even at her small size, it's theorized that she put up a hell of a fight. The police find 3 spent shell casings from a .380 caliber handgun.
That's a typical caliber for what? Like a personal protection handgun?
Yeah, it's smaller than a 9mm.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people that argue it's not an ideal self-defense load just because it's smaller.
Right.
9 and up is kind of generally thought to be where you want to stay. But a lot of people carry .380s because they're small. They're easily concealable. So for concealed carry, they make a lot of great options in .380. And the bullet technology has come so far. Probably even in 92, they had some good bullets in .380. Let's put it that way. So we talked a little bit, Gibbs, about how tough Mischelle was, what a fight we think she put up for her life.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine, man. I really, honestly, cannot imagine what she went through all the way to the end.
Well, she's all alone
Yeah.
in the wee hours of the morning, fighting for her life. You have to picture that. Now, I don't know what type of area this is. I don't know how rural it is, but I'm thinking it's somewhat rural because she's out there all alone until this man, Mark Abbott, stumbles upon her car. So when you paint that picture in your mind, it's rough. It's rough to think what she went through.
Absolutely.
But police knock on Mischelle's family's door around 3 a.m. and have to deliver to them the bad news.
So Michelle's boyfriend, Leon Lamb, he was going to be the first suspect. because he was the last person to see her alive. She actually stopped by his house around 11:30 that night and left there around 1 o'clock.
And it's natural that they would look at him first.
Oh, sure.
Number one, he's the boyfriend.
Right.
And number two, it comes out that he's the last person to see her alive. He's got to be suspect number one to either confirm or eliminate.
Now, we do know that she was out cruising, like with some guy friends, before she went over and saw him. So she was doing that. You know how, I want to say, young adults, kids do, college kids, they kind of just, in their communities, take the car out, kind of cruise from party to party, have a little bit of fun. So that's what she was doing on this night. I guess she probably got a little bored, dropped off the other people, and then went over and saw Leon and hung out for a while.
But when you say guy friends, these were guy friends.
These were guy friends. So they definitely loved each other, but they, like a lot of couples, would argue fairly often. But like Leon would tell the police, just because we argued, I still loved her.
Yeah, my wife and I argue. I don't know how many couples don't argue. Maybe there's some perfect couples out there, but we argue, and it doesn't change the fact that I love her. Now, it doesn't look good if your significant other winds up dead.
Yeah, and then you're going to want me to help bury that body.
Oh, that's true. You talking about my wife?
Oh,
don't talk about my wife
I
like that.
Your wife.
No, I'm just kidding.
She makes me dinner. And I think some of the arguments stemmed from the fact that Leon was kind of seeing some other girls on the side. And I have the feeling maybe she didn't really appreciate that.
Well, I don't know how many girlfriends would appreciate that, but it also seems like Leon's pretty forthright with the police.
Yeah, I think he's laying it all out there. I mean, at least it appears that way to me.
Because that doesn't make him look good to say, hey, number one, we argued a lot. And one of the things we argued about was the fact that I was seeing other girls. So, I mean, it says something about him.
Sure.
That it sounds like he was pretty honest in the interview,
and
at least from that standpoint.
Yeah. And he even tells him, that she seemed really nervous that night for some reason, to the point that he didn't feel like she really wanted to leave when she left at 1 o'clock. But she went, she went ahead and she did leave at 1. But he felt like there was something she wasn't telling him. We hear this sometimes in some of the ones we do. It's like they got something on their mind. You can feed off it. You can kind of feel it, but you don't know, what it was.
Because they never say it.
Right.
You can't, the person can't get it out of that other person that ultimately becomes the victim.
Right. Yeah.
And that's got to be a sinking feeling for Leon to, after the fact. Number one, his girlfriend died.
Yeah, that's got to be rough right there.
And then he's being looked at by the police.
Right.
Pretty hard, I would assume. And then add on top of this what you're saying about, he had a feeling that something wasn't right. She was nervous. I don't know, what do you want to call it? She had I don't want to call it a secret, but there was something on her mind.
And so then you doubt yourself, or you wish, should I stay?
Sure.
Don't go.
Then you get into the what could I have done?
The what ifs.
Right.
Yeah. The police look into him. They don't have anything to tie him to the murder scene. And then he also voluntarily does a polygraph and passes it. So at this point, I mean, Leon's looking pretty good on the clear.
And it would not be until 4 months later until the police would get another lead. And this comes from a few inmates in the county jail stating that a 17-year-old boy from Illinois that was locked up for assault had confessed to them that he killed Mischelle.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so this kid's from Illinois. Where's he from, Gibbs?
He's from Illinois.
He's from Illinois. These inmates say that just out of the blue, in normal conversation, he says, I killed a girl here in Missouri. So this 17-year-old's name was Josh Kezer, and he was locked up in a Missouri jail for assault. And now Mark Abbott, Gibbs, comes back into the picture, and Mark Abbott was the man who found Mischelle's car and reported it to the police. And Mark Abbott would pick Josh Kezer out of a photo lineup and say, it kind of looks like him. And by him, meaning the man that he saw driving away in the white car. He also saw a picture of Josh's car and said that that looked similar as well. But he wasn't 100% on this at all. And he came out and told investigators that he wasn't. But based on these two things, Gibbs, so a couple of inmates saying that he confessed to the crime, the photo identification by Mark Abbott, even though he said, I'm not 100% on this, were enough for police to charge Josh Kezer with first-degree murder.
Yeah, I think because how brutal this crime was, being this young, attractive female, I think they wanted to make sure they got somebody fast.
So when they charged Kezer with this crime, he was very confused as to what was going on. Is this all going to come out, Gibbs? He talks about how his nerves were on edge. He was scared shitless. He told the police in interrogations that what they were saying was not true, that all of the things that these inmates had said about him were lies. Now, we have to talk about, Gibbs, the fact that nobody in Mischelle's family or circle of friends knew Josh Kezer, and he didn't know any of them. To her whole world of family and friends, Josh Kezer is an absolute stranger. And what her family would say was that Mischelle was not the type of person to stop for a stranger in the middle of the night or very early in the morning, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So it seems a little strange, just looking at it on paper, that Josh Kezer would be the suspect. Because number one, you and I just spent a lot of time talking about how brutal a murder this was and how, at least in my opinion, a lot of times that points to a more personal type of suspect.
Sure.
Known to the victim.
Right.
Victims known to them. And I think that bears out in most cases. In a lot of cases, I'll say. Maybe not most. Kezer would go on to tell his attorney and the police that he never met Mischelle Lawless, and until they showed her picture to him, that he had never seen her face.
So he's saying, man, I've never seen this girl. I never touched this girl. I don't know anything about this girl.
I don't know this girl.
Now,
so how could I have killed this girl?
Right.
That's what he's saying.
Sure. And I'm sure they hear this stuff all the time, too, with people, right? Especially if people have a criminal background.
I would think as a police officer, you would have to be pretty jaded about people saying, I didn't do this or that.
Right.
Because who walks in and just says right away, yeah, I did that. Most people.
A fool.
Yeah. Most people are going to lie. They're going to put on an act. They don't want to go to jail. So police officers are seeing that side a lot of the time.
Now, we know Josh had a pretty rough background. I mean, at 17 years old, right, he dropped out of high school and he did belong to a gang. So, I mean, you're 17, you're already on the gang life, and he grew up in a bad environment. And he kind of bounced from living with his parents to living on the street. I mean, to be 17 years old living on the street, that's rough, you know?
It is rough.
Yeah. And there would be people in town that said, he definitely had that kind of homeless look sometimes with the, long, dirty, unwashed hair. And he was also known to have run-in with the law. And we knew that, right? Because that's where he was already in prison, not prison, but he was in jail for assault. So Kezer, he would admit that he did go through some tough times. So he's open with his background. He's not hiding anything. And he'll even go further to say that not only did he go through some tough times, the kids in his neighborhood that he knew, they went through tough times as well. And it was just part of life. And that being part of life meant that, they were hanging out and living on the streets with him as well.
So we have to talk about Josh Kezer's alibi. And it was that at the time of the murder, he was 350 miles away that night. But the police don't buy his alibi at all.
Well, they're pretty locked in on him,
Oh, I think they have a little bit of tunnel vision. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Once they heard the stories from the inmates, once Mark Abbott said, yeah, kind of looked like him, bam, I think they were off and running.
Yeah.
Now, it's going to be a whole year later in June of 1994 that Kezer's going to have his first date in court.
And they feel pretty good about it, him and his defense attorneys, right? They're saying, look, there's no motive here. There's no fingerprints. There's no weapon. There's no DNA. There's nothing to tie him to this. So, he's been sitting in jail for a year now. Let's get this trial going and let's get him out of here.
Now, I think you're definitely right, Gibbs, because the prosecution, they don't have any physical evidence. And remember, we talked about Mischelle Lawless having blood under her fingernails. And they were able to extract DNA from that But when they run the tests, that DNA does not match Josh Kezer. So what they had in court was the jailhouse informants testifying, swearing under oath on the stand that Kezer had confessed to the murder of Mischelle Lawless. They have Mark Abbott, who identifies in court Josh Kezer as the driver of the white car he saw near the crime scene. But the defense kind of pounces on him because if you remember, we talked about the fact that originally he had said that it was Hispanic male behind the wheel of that white car. And Josh Kezer is not Hispanic male. He's Caucasian.
Yes, that's conflicting.
So that is definitely a conflict, no doubt about it. But then the prosecution they get something that they never expected because one of Michelle's friends is watching the trial in the courtroom. She sees Josh Kezer and she goes to talk to the prosecutor and says that seeing him in the courtroom reminded her that she had seen him before or somebody that looks like him. Again, this is a little bit like what Mark Abbott said, right? Yeah, it looks like him, but I'm not 100% sure. So this friend is saying, it looks like a guy that I saw one time at a Halloween party arguing with Mischelle because this guy wanted to go out with her. She turned him down and the guy didn't like that. And I guess he got a little aggressive with her.
Yeah, I got really aggressive from what I understand. I mean, he was calling her like, bitch, you don't want to go out with me, and kind of getting in her face and kind of pushing on her.
Well, that's pretty aggressive.
That's aggressive.
But what this allows prosecutors to do is to put her on the stand to tell this story. So they hadn't planned this at all, Gibbs. I mean, this came up in the middle of the trial or during the trial.
Yeah, this is like a little bonus in their lap, you know. Plus, this alleged conversation at this Halloween party was just a week before Mischelle was killed.
And you have to think that something like that would stick in a jury's mind. Right? This friend saying, I think I saw this guy fighting with Mischelle just a week before her death. That's the kind of thing that can stick in a juror's mind.
Yeah, throw her up on the stand, and that's what they did.
So you have conflicting eyewitness statements. Nobody 100% positively saying they're sure it was Josh Kezer that they saw.
Looks like him.
Looks like him. And then prosecutors come out and they tell the jury that tests confirm there was blood on Kezer's jacket and in the car he was driving. But they can't say whose blood it is.
Yeah, but they paint that picture.
Oh, as a juror, the guy's got blood on him. He's got blood in his car.
Yep.
But it's awful strange with DNA, even at that point in time, that they can't. I can understand how they can't say whose it is, but you would think they would be able to either exclude Mischelle.
Yeah, but they're doing a really good job of walking this jury where they want them.
But it works because when the jury gets the case, it only takes them 3.5 hours to find Josh Kezer guilty of second-degree murder for the death of Mischelle Lawless.
So he got a lesser charge, right? Because he was arrested for first degree. They find him guilty of second degree. Now, in the courtroom, you could actually hear Kezer after the verdict comes out. I mean, he's screaming, it wasn't me, as they take him back, out of the courtroom.
So Josh Kezer is sentenced to 60 years in prison, and he's sent to the Missouri State Penitentiary, Gibbs, which is known as the Walls, the bloodiest 47 acres in America.
That sounds like a scary place.
That can't be good. Keep in mind, this Kezer guy, he's a young guy.
Yeah,
he was
60 years, man.
He was 17 years old at the time that Mischelle died.
And his first trial started when he was about
19.
18, 19. Yeah, man. So you're 60 years? Wow. 80 years when you get out of.
Looking at 60 years, being 19 years old. Yeah. Now, this prison is now closed, but Kezer did spend his first 10 years in the Walls. It doesn't sound right. It sounds strange to say in the Walls, but that's what they called it, I guess, the Walls.
The Walls.
He was in Housing Unit 4, Cell 99. And Josh Kezer would later say that those 10 years at the Missouri State Penitentiary were the toughest that he went through. He got beat up a lot.
He would talk about, attempted sexual assault on him, that he successfully fought it off. But, I mean, he literally got his ass beat each and every time trying to fight it off.
Right. And he would say that there were a lot of times where he thought he would rather be dead than have to stay in that prison.
Yeah, he'd say he would be beaten so severely that he would rather not ever wake up again and just have it be over.
So we move forward to 2005. This is more than 12 years after Mischelle Lawless was shot dead. A new sheriff is elected in Scott County, Missouri.
There's a new sheriff in town.
There is a new sheriff in town, and this guy's name is Rick Walter. And he never felt right about the conviction of Josh Kezer, so he decided to reopen the case. And Rick Walter was actually a part-time deputy back in 1992, and he was part of that group that was on the scene of Mischelle's murder, trying to gather clues and trying to figure out what happened. And now he's elected as the sheriff of Scott County, Missouri. But this wasn't a popular move to make as a newly elected sheriff, because this was a horrific crime, Gibbs, in a small town. People like the fact that crimes are solved. So when you go opening up a case and basically saying, hey, we're going to look at this again because we're not sure whether it was right or not, you're going to rub some people the wrong way.
And boy, did it ever.
Oh, it did. I mean, this guy got death threats after, he made this announcement. Now, what he did was he hired an outside investigator to get a fresh set of eyes on this thing to review the case. And as this investigator was reviewing the case file, he started to have some very serious questions about the prosecution's case because he's seeing it fall apart as he's dissecting this case file. And one of the first things that this investigator finds out, Gibbs, is that those jailhouse informants who testified against Josh Kezer all got some kind of deal in exchange for their testimony. And when these three people are later questioned, they all admit to lying during Josh Kezer's trial because they wanted this deal that was being offered. And we have to talk about the blood that the prosecution made a big deal about, on Kezer's jacket in his car. And it comes out, Gibbs, that it wasn't even blood.
No, wasn't even blood, man. But boy, they sure painted a pretty picture.
Well, and they say, well, we don't know whose it is. And it would later come out that they knew that it wasn't blood at trial, before trial, because they had sprayed luminol on it. It didn't fluoresce. So that was kind of a show. It was more than a show.
They painted a good picture.
A fabrication.
But they were trying to paint that picture.
They were, which is what the prosecution does, right? They're painting a picture for the jury, but they're supposed to do it based on the facts of the case.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have some form of integrity in that position. Yeah, so the investigator dove a little deeper in this Halloween party thing, talked to the woman that actually had the party, and she's like, this is what she says. I know every man was there, and I can tell you he was not here.
Josh Kezer.
Yeah, Josh Kezer was never at my party.
Now, this was the woman that threw the party.
Yeah, she threw the party.
Mischelle's friend, who actually testified that Kezer was there, would later say that she gave that testimony because she was pressured to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she would actually say that it was the sheriff back then that pressured her into it because they were trying to make this conviction stick. And it sounds like to me that they were going to do whatever they had to do to get a conviction, throwing all ethics out the window.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good. It's not good for him. And not only do we have the host saying he was never there, and we have the friend that said he was but really wasn't there. Now they have some sworn, affidavits from a couple other girls that also say he was never at that party. So it's confirmed he was never at that party.
And we talked about how damning that probably was for jurors, right? The party was a week before the murder. They have somebody on the stand putting Josh Kezer in a situation where he's fighting with this girl that's going to wind up dead. And I think about the jury, right, who convicted Josh Kezer, Man, you can't blame them at all.
Well, they can only go off of what's presented.
Yeah, so in a sense, they were kind of duped in this thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think even as family members, you probably felt...
Well, I would be pissed. If I was the family of Mischelle Lawless, I would be upset that the police got tunnel vision. They went after this guy. They did things they shouldn't have done, is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Now, they probably had some peace of mind knowing, hey, our daughter's killer got justice. Now, all of a sudden, they find out that, no, our daughter's killer didn't get justice. We don't know who it is. And one of the main reasons why we don't know who it is because of this tunnel vision and the police putting all this effort into a suspect that they had to force into jail, for lack of a better term. They had to make the puzzle pieces fit. They peeled the stickers off the Rubik's Cube is what they did.
They're trying to make the glove fit.
Well, and this is one of those, Gibbs, where you and I are not saying that he's not guilty. We don't know that. What we're saying is, based on the evidence that was submitted at trial, he was found guilty. And then all of a sudden it comes out that this major evidence that they had was not true. People said things on the stand that were not true. This blood evidence wasn't even blood. That's all we're saying. That he was convicted on shoddy evidence, I think, is what we're saying.
Yeah, and I think that's why the sheriff opened up the case, because he had a feeling something wasn't adding up. His investigator proved there were some issues, but now you have to take it to the next level.
And you got to give that guy a lot of credit, because he took a lot of shit for doing that.
In 2005, did you reopen the investigation into the Lawless murder?
Not officially. What I did was I found the old case files and got it out, spread everything out that we had, and started reading. That was probably, I don't know, September roughly, maybe a little sooner than that, maybe August, I'm not sure. And we started looking at the old case files, started reading the old case files.
Why did you do that, sir? The case was closed. You had a person in prison convicted.
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Well, you hear a lot of things. A lot of it came from the street, so to speak, from people that I had talked to. They'd come up to me and over the years, not just since I've been sheriff, and said that they felt that a lot of people said that they asked me point blank, do you have the right guy in prison? And some people said that I didn't. That was, and I also had law enforcement that also had told me the same thing, that they felt that maybe there may be more to this case. I've always felt that there was something wrong with it. I felt that maybe more people was involved than just one person.
And did you look into Josh Kezer at all? Find out how old he was at the time this crime was committed?
Yes.
He was 17 years old, wasn't he?
Yes.
And was he living in Kankakee, Illinois?
From what I could find, yes. And he had been in the southeast Missouri area.
From time to time. And did you testify at the trial that you saw Josh Kezer at the Halloween party having an altercation with Mischelle Lawless?
I was mistaken because I said that, but I was just an honest mistake. It was not him.
You now believe you were mistaken?
I know I was mistaken.
I'm going to show you what has been marked where the person you saw at the Halloween party had light brown hair. Tell us how you describe the person at the Halloween.
He was real clean cut, haircut real short, nothing like that. And at the trial, Josh had his hair real clean cut and everything, and that's why I believed it was him.
You had sensed over that send you a picture that you were mistaken and you regret it.
I regret it horribly. It affects me every day. An innocent man has been locked up, and he doesn't deserve to be.
So I wish that clip was better quality, but it's compelling audio because it is the actual sheriff talking to a judge about the Josh Kezer, Mischelle Lawless case. And then you heard Michelle's friend actually, and quite emotional, Gibbs, about the fact that she said she was mistaken. She doesn't come out and say that she was pressured into it, but she would later on in interviews.
And I think you can hear her saying that at the time of trial, you got to remember at trial, they cleaned Josh up, right? He cut his hair, shaved him up.
Because you and I talked about the fact that he had been living on the streets. His hair was long. It was dirty. So he didn't look anything like he would ultimately look when he was presented at trial.
Right. And so she's saying at the actual party, it was a clean-cut guy that was, harassing Mischelle, but it wasn't Josh.
And it's December 2008. Josh has been in prison for over 15 years. A judge would finally review his case, and this audio is coming from that review.
Exactly. You're saying this is a gentleman who told you after trial that he had testimony fabricated? Is that your testimony?
He told me that by talking to the snitch witnesses, he told me repeatedly not to take it personally. It was just a case. And that by talking to these witnesses, with these jailhouse witnesses without a recorder or someone with me, it gave him the opportunity to go talk to Sean Mangus and place me on trial and essentially muzzle me. He told me he wanted me out of the case because I knew the facts too well. I didn't know the facts well.
So I just want to make sure I got this right. He did not tell you that he fabricated testimony.
Well,
I don't care what you said. I just want to know.
He strongly implied that he fabricated testimony with no regret.
Well, if you really believed he fabricated testimony and told you that, wouldn't you view that as unethical?
Oh, virtually everything Mr. Hulshoff did in this case was unethical. Yes, I breached my ethical duty. I should have reported Kenny Hulshoff to the Office of the Chief Disciplinary Counsel for professional misconduct.
But you did.
Yes, I did not report it. No, I did not. I should have. And yes, I broke my ethical duty by not reporting him.
You were a new attorney on this case, weren't you, Mr. Rosner?
My first case out of law school.
Is this worn on you throughout your career?
Yes, Mr. Weiss, but more than anything, I'm ashamed that I didn't go see Josh Kezer in prison. I wasn't a big enough man to do that. This has had a tremendous impact on my career. I don't trust the police. I don't trust prosecutors. I've never seen prosecutorial misconduct this bad in my life.
So what you're hearing in that audio is testimony from the judge's review. So there's witnesses being called, there's attorneys asking these people questions, but it's not a full-blown trial. It's more like the judge reviewing what the witnesses are saying. And that witness was someone that was part of the prosecution. And you can hear him, Gibbs. He throws the lead prosecutor directly under the bus. I mean, basically stating that everything this guy did was unethical. Now, I don't know how much more convincing it can be to have somebody that was involved in it say, and he admits it, I knew some of that stuff was not right. And I didn't do the right thing. I should have, but I didn't. So 2 months later, on February 17th, 2009, the judge, Richard Callahan, issues his ruling. This is a quote from Judge Callahan. I've spent my life in the justice system, and so I'm embarrassed for our system. It made a big mistake in the case of Josh Kezer, and this judge is so distressed by what he's seen out of this case, the testimony that he's heard from these witnesses, that he actually does something that's pretty uncommon. He doesn't order a new trial. He actually, right then and there, declares Josh Kezer an innocent man.
That's big.
It's huge. That's how convinced this judge was.
Compelling.
After hearing all of these witnesses come forward, basically testifying now for Josh, when back in the day they were either involved in the prosecution or a witness for the prosecution. And the very next day, Josh Kezer walked out of prison as a free man. after 16 years, Gibbs.
Can you imagine?
I can't.
Seriously, 16 years. The first 10 we know were pure hell, right? He was at the toughest prison, beaten what seemed like probably in his world daily.
And I'm sure the next 6 years after that were no
walk in
cakewalk.
the park, yeah, but man, 16 years.
Bad enough to go to prison. But what about if you knew for a fact that you didn't commit the crime and that all the evidence that had put you where you're at, you knew couldn't be true?
To the point that you knew so much that it was not true. You sat there and thought, logically, how could anybody think that I did this? Elementary kid would think that I was innocent. How am I here?
But it happens way too often.
And
we're hearing about it more and more. As these cases are being re-reviewed, there's all kinds of wrongful convictions that are coming to light.
So here's the scarier part. What if a new sheriff doesn't take over? This case never gets reviewed. He's in prison today, right?
Yeah. A lot of dominoes have to fall in the right way. And that's what's kind of sad because it happened, thankfully, and I think the outcome worked out. But like you said, what if this domino doesn't fall? What if this doesn't happen?
Right.
It takes all these things.
And what if his sentence was not 60 years, but death?
Yeah, and I don't know if most likely he might not have been executed that quickly. It seems, I think it varies by state, but it takes a long time to execute people.
And maybe this is part of the reason why.
But what if and it has happened, I think. I know for a fact it's happened where people have been executed and after the fact they find out that there's no way they could have committed the crime. That's horrible, dude. What we have to talk about now is Josh Kezer didn't do it. Who did? Who wanted Mischelle Lawless dead? And the same sheriff that reopened the case would say that they have a handful of potential suspects. And one of those potential suspects is somebody that we've already talked about. And that is Mark Abbott, the person that claimed to have found Mischelle. The sheriff comes out and says, he's got issues with some of the statements that Mark Abbott has made over the years, especially the ones that he made back at the time right after Michelle's murder. And one of those statements in particular that would come out was that Mark Abbott told investigators that when he found Mischelle slumped in the car, is how he put it, he reached through the window and grabbed her and pulled her back so he could see her face. But the issue that police have with this is that they say that the window of her car was not open far enough for someone to be able to do this the way that Mark Abbott claims he did. Abbott also told police back then that he did not know Mischelle Lawless, but it's come out that people in town say that that's not true. But there's some other damning allegations, Gibbs, that have been made against Mark Abbott. One comes from a friend of his that was an owner of a gun shop in town. And this friend claims that Mark Abbott told him, quote, "I took care of that bitch," unquote. Now, as you can imagine, Mark Abbott denies ever telling his friend this. This was not something that you would admit to, even if you did it.
Exactly.
Wouldn't be in your favor to do so.
Unless you're an idiot.
And then you have an affidavit from a narcotics detective who said that Abbott told him directly he did not kill Mischelle, but he watched another man do it. So you got a lot of stuff going against this guy.
Yeah, it's coming up pretty hard on him right now. And this is a narcotics detective. So there's got to be some credibility there.
You want to think, Gibbs, that there would be a lot of credibility in an affidavit like that from somebody in that position. And we talked about the fact that Mark said he had never met Mischelle, but one of Michelle's friends would come out later and say that Mischelle actually told her that she had met Mark Abbott. And her friend remembers this because Mischelle said that he was really good looking. That's how she remembered having this conversation with Mischelle. So again, Gibbs, a lot of bad stuff coming out about this guy. But what's very interesting about Mark Abbott is that he has an identical twin. And they were known to play games on people. And you've seen this in movies or heard it before, especially when kids are younger in school. You're playing a game where you're acting like you're the other twin.
Yeah.
That's what these guys did.
I've done that with my alter ego, English
with,
Gibby.
With your imaginary friend?
Yeah, my English Gibby.
So the sheriff comes out and says they're actually not even sure which brother came to the police station early that morning and reported that they found Mischelle dead. Was it Mark or was it his twin brother, Matt?
See, this is intriguing to me.
No, it is because, this is where you get into the mystery. Because Matt says, hey, it wasn't me. I wasn't even there. But you've got locals in the town saying that they believe it was him and not even Mark that went to the police station that day. Now, both Mark and Matt were convicted on federal drug charges in 1997. And there are some theories floating out there, Gibbs, that maybe Mischelle's death could have possibly been related to some type of drug operation. So maybe she found out something that she wasn't supposed to. Maybe she knew something that somebody thought she could use against them, and they
silence her.
And that's why she was murdered. So, I mean, that is one theory that you'll find out there. The sheriff comes out and he would say that they really haven't ever officially removed Leon Lamb, Mischelle's boyfriend, from their radar. We talked about it, Gibbs. He was the last one to have seen her alive, besides the killer or killers. And testing would prove that the DNA under her fingernails was his. And he would actually say that that makes sense because he and Mischelle were intimate that night when she came over. So it shouldn't be unusual that she might have DNA under her fingernails that's his.
So the one thing about Lamb is, earlier we were talking about him now. I mean, he's very upfront about everything. So, I mean, he's trying to be as crystal clear as possible. And don't forget, he did pass the polygraph.
Yeah, no, I think it's good to point that out because we talked about him very early on in the episode.
And I think the biggest issue about this whole murder scene investigation is they just don't really have any strong physical evidence against anybody. And they have to figure out how can they get physical evidence, because they're going to need something to tie somebody to this.
And what they've done in this case, Gibbs, they've actually reached out to a place called the Crime Farm in the Netherlands because they have some very specialized techniques of pulling microscopic DNA off of clothing. And what they found is one of the Abbott's boys' DNA from an article of clothing that Mischelle Lawless was wearing when she was killed.
And I think the interesting part about this is we know that Mark touched Mischelle based off his statements on her shoulder. And he actually says during the investigation, he didn't touch her anywhere below the breast when he moved her body to see if she was still alive. However, where they find this microscopic DNA, skin cells or whatever, they find it below that area. They don't come out and say exactly where they find it because the investigation is ongoing. But it's interesting because if they can tie it in somehow, they might have somewhere to go with this. The bigger problem, though, Mike, is that they can't say which Abbott boy because they're identical twins. So they know it's the DNA from the Abbotts.
Either Mark or Matt.
Yeah, but they can't nail it down. And that could be a potential problem, I guess.
I would say it'd be a huge problem in court.
Yeah, I mean, because you can't say A or B. You have to actually be able to nail it down to whose DNA it is.
But I think to be fair, Gibbs, we have to point out that Mark Abbott has given DNA samples to the police for review.
Yep.
To be fair to him.
Oh, absolutely.
He has cooperated.
So, and who says that if I touch your shoulder with my bare hand, that some of my dry skin cells, flakes, whatever, find its way down to another area?
Right. Bounce off down into somebody's lap or...
I don't know how all that works, but I think it's...
Because again, they're finding DNA that police using their normal type of examinations and their procedures and their technology couldn't find. This is hard to find DNA. And I'm using air quotes here because I don't know how else to say it. I mean, they had to go to the Netherlands to get this type of specialization. So we talked about Josh Kezer being released. And after his release, he started working construction. He got his own place. He tried to get his life together. After 16 years, Gibbs, that's not an easy thing to do. Remember how young this guy was. He had dropped out of high school.
Yeah.
He had no college education for sure. He didn't even, graduate high school.
Yeah, he's in his 30s now. Well, then, when he was released.
Right, when he was released. So he's trying to get his life together, and he does go out and speak a lot about his experiences.
He's an advocate with, in regards to prison reform as well.
And wrongful conviction.
Yep.
And the one thing that I find fascinating about Josh Kezer is that he says he's not angry about what happened to him. And I don't know if I'm a good enough man to say that I would feel the same way.
So we just did an episode not too long ago that involved Marty Tankliff, and he basically said the same thing. After spending all those years in, he stayed positive the whole time he was in there, and then when he got out, he wasn't going to hold a grudge. He was moving forward with his life. I mean, now he did sue the county, just like Josh did here, right? Josh sued the county and won millions of dollars.
And I don't blame him at all.
No.
I mean, they ramrodded him. I don't know how else you could say it.
Now, he does do a pretty cool thing. He donates $10,000 to a fund to help find Michelle's killer. I mean, he didn't have to do anything, and he chose to do that because, he just like all of us would like this killer to be brought to justice.
I think him as much as anyone besides Michelle's family, right? Because he spent 16 years in prison.
Yeah.
I would think he would want this person found.
He wants that bastard
so badly.
Yeah.
Just to, kind of put it all completely behind him.
Well, it's probably just the final confirmation that for any of those doubters out there.
Right. I guess that's what I meant. Yeah, you're saying it exactly right, because even though the judge has said, hey, I've listened to all this evidence, there's no way this guy did it.
Right.
That there's still people out there, I'm sure, that think he did it.
The previous prosecutor still says that they feel they have the right person. And, of course, he probably would say that.
Yeah, because he did some things that other people have said were not quite so ethical. We do a lot of these cases. We always feel for the victims' families. I feel for Michelle's family.
I do, man. Her mom, her dad, her brother, sister. I mean, this has gone on such a long time with you think nothing worse than you think you have closure and then you don't have closure.
I was just waiting to see at what point in the episode you would say closure.
Closure. It's important.
No, I think they want that. They also want justice. And I touched on it before, but they thought they had it.
Yeah.
And then to find out that it was all kind of a hoax or a sham, or
chair was pulled out from underneath you.
Right.
Yeah.
That had to be like opening up a horrible wound all over again for them.
I just think she had so much to offer to this place, and she didn't get a chance to do that,
She was just a great person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as of now, this case is still open. The sheriffs, they're still working on it. Sheriff's Department.
It's not giving up.
Still looking at suspects, still tracking down new leads. And the sheriff did come out and say that he feels in his gut like he is going to bring somebody to justice one day for this crime.
And I believe him. I actually, of all the unsolved we do, I actually feel that this one will be solved.
No, I would agree with you. I think there's a very good chance because there was so much time wasted of not going down the path of searching for the killer, because in the prosecution's mind, they had the killer. He was locked up. There's no reason to keep chasing down leads and doing all that stuff.
Yeah. And if they're listening, give us a call. We'll talk about it. But you need to turn yourself in, man. You know you did it. We know you're going to be found out.
Gibby knows you did it.
I do.
Turn yourself in now.
Call our number. Talk to us. We'll help you get to the right place to turn yourself in.
Or Gibby will come get you.
With my K-ball.
One or the other. All right, Gibb. So that's another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.